I just came across this very interesting and incredible woman, Yasmine Mohammed. She was born in Canada and she grew up in a very strict Islamic household. And she shares her story, and I think it's worth listening to. I certainly have no idea what it's like to be, born in an Islamic Muslim family. I'm sure there's a huge range, obviously, of how, what happens behind closed doors, but it's just interesting to see her experience in Canada. So let's just listen to her story, and then I'm going to pause it in a few spots, but I'm going to let her talk quite a bit because it's such an incredible interview here.
Reason why you see such astounding numbers is because it's so much a part
Which I,
of the culture. It's so normalized. This
I had it in like double speed there. Let me just go back to normal. Okay, make sure all the volume's good to go. Let's get that up a bit. And let's see. Okay.
this idea of gang rapes that we've heard about that were happening in Germany, for example. So when men go around a woman and basically like predators, pouncing on their prey in the middle, which we saw happen in Tahrir Square in Egypt. That's called taharrush. It has a name. It's a part of the culture. It's what men do when they see a woman alone, and when she's not, protected by other men around her, then they consider her to be prey, and then they do this. They surround her. In Islam, there is this idea that if a woman is covered in hijab, she is to be protected. She is not to be raped. And if a woman does not have hijab on, then she's asking for it. She doesn't. She
I mean, a couple things. Just imagine that, like, first of all, so she's growing up in Canada, and this is what she's learning in her experience from her parents. I'm not saying this is what everybody says who's from a Muslim family. I know many that wouldn't say this, but this is what she's learning in Canada from her own parents, as she goes on to say. And imagine having a word to describe, a gang rape in any type of positive way. I can't comment on the language. I don't know it, but this is she obviously does. This is what she's getting from that. So just a couple of quick points in there.
it's free for all basically. And so there's a very clear differentiation between how they treat not just Muslim women and non-Muslim women, because even if a Muslim woman is not wearing hijab, then they will treat her with the same disdain and attack her in the same way. And having said that, the truth of the matter is this 99.3% number that I gave you, a huge amount of those women are in hijab and even in niqab as well. Because at the end of the day, when you raise your boys to think of girls as lesser than and to see them as things to be used, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to, whether the woman is in hijab, whether she is not in hijab, whether she's in niqab, they they treat women in that way. They think that women are there for them to use as they please. But it has to be said that when they are European, non Muslim, Western women, this is exacerbated. They see all of these women who are non Muslims as completely loose whores, just women that they can use and throw away and that they shouldn't care about.
Okay, so whatever extent this goes on, like I don't know if it's 1%, 50%, whatever, in Muslim families in Canada, we need to be aware basically of what's going on. And if this is being taught anywhere, we obviously need to shine a light on it because this, it's not a little different. I mean, this really is not going to work culturally. We need to snuff it out. Like basically 100%, you got to get that aspect out. I'm not saying get the Muslims out at all. I'm just saying that type of aspect, if that's being taught to any of the kids, like going to school with my kids, I mean, yeah, that better not be happening at home. Anybody's home.
That they don't need to care about because they have been taught that these women are unimportant. So in in the Quran, they talk about what your right hand possesses. Medicat aymanukum. And that means that what your right hand possesses are women who are sex slaves, non-Muslim women who were taken as war booty, basically. So that's the kind of thing you would see with Yazidi women in Iraq, with, Israeli women and Hamas, with Hindu women in Pakistan, with Christian women in Nigeria, and here in the UK, you saw that with the gangs, the Rotherham gangs, and it's all coming from that same mindset of non-Muslim women being, just treated with such disdain that
We
they
need
can
to
just
get
be
rid of that
used and
mindset,
abused and thrown
obviously.
away.
Do you think it's ever possible, when you look at countries that do publish data on sexual assaults and rapes by nationality, it's startling, it's alarming, countries like Sweden, Denmark. But do you think it's possible to ever integrate these men, to re-educate these men, or do you think that's essentially a lost cause?
Well, I think that we should take a step back, and before we allow men to just come into the country, whether it's on their dinghies or whether it's through open borders or however it is that they're coming in, that's the problem. The problem is that we're not controlling our borders, and what we have to be doing is we have to make sure that the people that are entering the country are people that we want here. They are people that share our values, that possibly have skills and abilities that are going to be able to serve the country that they are joining.
And obviously, like sharing the values. I mean, Canada's a very open society. It doesn't mean you have to love hockey and get into every single Canadian thing, but it definitely means like there's a pretty low bar, but it's stuff like, not treating other people's daughters as potential sex slaves. I mean, that's gotta be a minimum. And if anybody's doing that, again, I don't live in one of these households, so I don't know what it's like, but this is her story. I mean, and she's Canadian, so it's pretty scary.
But what happens is we're just letting anyone in that carries such deeply held beliefs, and then we expect that just because they've moved geographical locations that they're going to suddenly change their minds and see women as equals, or no, absolutely, that's not going to change. That's going to take generations to change, if it will change at all, because these ideas don't have borders. They get perpetuated, right? Generation after generation, they're just teaching their children the same thing again and again. It's what I was taught in Islamic schools in Canada. I was born and raised in the West. Many of the people that I speak to on my podcast, born and raised all over Europe, America, Australia, it doesn't matter. We're getting taught these things in Western countries. So the geographical location makes no difference. What they believe is what they believe, If you were to move to Cuba, you're not going to suddenly embrace communism. Your beliefs, your values are going to remain the same. And the same is true for them. So no, I don't think that there's any hope that we're going to take men like that and encourage them to evolve 1,400 years. No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think we should be making sure that only the people that align with our values should
So that's what she's saying. Is that worth listening to and taking very seriously? I would say that it is.
be welcome into our countries.
What on earth do we do about communities that are already here? There are parts of the UK that have very predominant Muslim populations, and they tend to often be ghettoized, and they tend to often be cut off from the outside world. What sort of extreme measures or policies should governments be looking at to say, okay, we now need to deal with this, if they ever do decide they need to deal with this?
Yeah. So I think the first problem is the one that you mentioned there, which is the ghettoization. So when you have these separatist communities, as they call them in France, where they live in completely separate areas. I was speaking to a woman who grew up in Scotland in a Pakistani ghetto. She didn't even speak English. She'd never met shopkeepers or in the bank, or everybody she's ever interacted with has been Pakistani. And it's pretty shocking how separate these communities can be from the countries around them. And I was speaking to a Somali man in Australia, and he was telling me the exact same thing. An Afghan girl in Sweden, and she was telling me the exact same thing. You live in such a separate bubble that you are unaware almost of the country around you. And that was my experience as well in Canada. I lived in the exact same way. So first of all, the problem is that ghettoization, that we have to break apart. So when you start bringing migrants in, bringing refugees in, what they do is they tend to put them in the same area with other people with the same.
I mean, just quickly, she is knocking it out of the park right now. So, being a Canadian, you'd hope that I'm sure she'd talk to the government for free and, let them know what's going on. She sounds very intelligent, calm, and reasonable. It'd be ridiculous if they're not taking her seriously.
Cultural or religious background because they feel like that's going to help them to assimilate better. I disagree with that. I don't think that that's going to help them to assimilate at all. I think that's going to be the opposite of helping them to assimilate. It's going to encourage them to continue speaking their own language, following their same culture, and they're not going to assimilate into the larger society. And I've actually heard this from other immigrant communities as well. So as an educator, we have a lot of international students from China, and in Canada we do the same thing where we take these populations from China and we put them in areas that are highly populated with other Chinese people. But they say to me, that makes it harder because when do I get the opportunity to speak English other than when I'm in the classroom? Because whether I'm in home or in the restaurants or in the bank or in the shops or everywhere, we're just all speaking Cantonese to each other. So I think that's the first problem. And then the second problem is that we do not apply the law to everybody the same. We treat people differently based
I
on
mean,
their
this is
ethnicity or based
huge.
on their religion. So if man A has perpetrated a crime and he happens to, have the last name Smith or Jones and he's got blonde hair and blue eyes, and man B has the same crime, but maybe he's got darker skin and his name is Ahmed or Ali, then they're going to be treated differently. People are going to be afraid of the term Islamophobia, bigotry, racism, whatever. And so they're going to be treating that second man differently. And that is what empowers them. So in my book, I talk about how that happened to me as a child when I went to my government and I told child services about what was happening to me in my home. And I was treated differently than another Canadian girl would have been treated. If a regular Canadian girl whose family came, generations ago from Scotland or Ireland said to them, I am being beaten, I am being hung and whipped, then that girl would have been taken out of that home. But because it was me, because my family is Muslim, because my family is from Egypt, they said, well, that's your culture, right? And we see the same things with
Can you believe it? I mean, think about that. That's what they did in Canada. She told them, and they said, "That's your culture. That's what they do." Isn't that gross?
female genital mutilation, a big problem here in the UK and in America and Canada and everywhere else. If a blonde hair, blue eyed father took a razor to his daughter's clitoris, that man would be either in prison or in a psych ward. But when a Somali father does it, or when an Egyptian mother does it, then it's like, well, we'll give them a pamphlet and we'll educate them. You see, and that just empowers them.
Unbelievable. Okay, so this goes on. That's like a third of the interview. I will put a link to it. I think it's fascinating. You should check out her book, which I got. Unbelievable story. And you can tell this is what happens all over the West, not just Canada. But being from Canada, it's more concerning. And having an ally like this, someone who can speak out, who's lived it in the country and can explain it to our clearly naive government would be, I would think, such an incredible asset and a help on like of what to do, how to integrate people, how to have a harmonious society, which we've been hoping for. Like she's the perfect type of immigrant. This is what we want. And somehow she's silenced because, as she said, people are scared of hurting people's feelings. The whole interview is great. I'll just stop it there for now, just to not spoil the whole thing. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and I hope you found it interesting as I did. So, hope you like this channel. Subscribe, like the video, comment, and I'll definitely be making more of them. But very curious as to your thoughts on this. See you in the next one.